we are going to cast the psychosocial aside, just to a small degree, for our next session, and hear from the psychiatrist's perspective, courtesy of Professor David J. Castle, who is the Chair of Psychiatry at St Vincent's Health and the University of Melbourne. He knows about which he speaks. Good Lord, he's published some 350 journal articles, papers and chapters. You must be knackered. 350. And you review others for other people as if you don't do enough of your own. Good Lord. I know you're speaking about cognitive issues, so typically seen in schizophrenia and so on, and mood-related issues, bipolar-related and so on. And David J. Castle, do you use the J to distinguish yourself from another David Castle? Or just distinguish yourself in general? I thought you might be related by chance to Michael J. Fox. No? All right, folks, ladies and gentlemen, David will talk. You're also taking questions, aren't you, towards the end? Please make them very welcome. David J.
There's another David J. Castle at the University of Melbourne, and it's very confusing. And he's meant to look after psychologists and students, so I get all these furious emails from people to say, you haven't responded to my request for my exam results or something. If you really don't want to be photographed, I've got another tip for you. If you take enough of these stickers and plaster them all over your face, then you'll definitely not be able to be recognised. Look, I'm really pleased to come and talk today, and Caroline very bravely said I could talk about whatever I liked, and so Caroline, it's all your responsibility.
Something to do with mental health, I think was the phrase. Given how far John went this morning away from what I asked him to talk about, from a perspective, I'm now not expecting anything particularly.
This sounds like a challenge. All right. Well, the title says work and mental illness. What I'm going to do is actually talk about two main issues, and it links with work which we've been doing in the area of bipolar, and also a little bit about work from the States predominantly on cognition and cognitive remediation in schizophrenia. And the reason for choosing those topics is that these bipolar disorder and schizophrenia have at their core certain problems which make it difficult to get gainful employment and stay in gainful employment. And we know that there's a major challenge still for us. Caroline and her group haven't quite solved the problem for everybody with a mental illness getting into work, but are making great strides in that area. And I think that the work particularly which they've done in terms of the LEAP and HOPE is terrific. And my bet is that one can actually build on some of that and then address some other issues like mood instability and bipolar and the cognitive problems associated with schizophrenia to get people even more well engaged in work and also staying in gainful employment. So, you know, we know that people with schizophrenia and related disorders and bipolar disorder are, you know, very compromised in terms of work inclusion. In fact, I'll call this work exclusion. These are results from a study called the Low Prevalence Study, which was conducted now about 10 years ago. It was represented a sample of 980 Australians with schizophrenia-related disorders or bipolar disorder, and they were interviewed and involved in asking about their symptom sets and their demographics and other things. One of the things we were particularly appalled to find out was that very, very few had full-time employment. So 5.8% of males, 6.1% of females. And this is in a country, as you know, an affluent country, a country where our rates of unemployment in the general population are very low. What's also worrying is that the vast majority of people, so 72% of males, 62% of females, are on disability support pension. And you know, I actually blame, in many ways, us as psychiatrists around this, because far too readily, I think, and far too early on in the course of these disorders, we reach for the disability support pension pad. And it's almost like the message is, well, you know, you're disabled and we're going to stay on this forever. people then come to sort of expect that that is the case. And the psychiatrist and the client or consumer or patient or whatever you would like to call them gets into the same sort of mindset. And I think the challenge for us is to challenge that mindset and to use disability support pensions only in the shorter term and with a view to setting in place the correct strategies for that individual to actually work towards employment. And I don't think that that's a pipe dream anymore. I think that with the work which is being done here and other places around the country and around the world, I think that it is possible to get more and more people into employment. And of course, there are very good reasons why people with mental illness benefit from being in employment, and a lot of those are generic reasons which everybody, of course, benefits from. And the structure of daily activities, I think, is key. And I don't know about you guys, but this morning when I woke up and it was a little bit cloudy and drizzly, and I thought, well, if I didn't have to go to work, I probably wouldn't. And to lie in bed for another couple of hours, and you know, you can see how the whole pattern goes, and how many people with schizophrenia, for example, land up being up in the night on the internet and sleeping all day, and these patterns become quickly entrenched. People with bipolar disorder, once their structures to their days are lost, it makes the control of illness and control of mood stability much more difficult. Of course, we also know that people with these problems have great impairment in terms of socialization, and work is a social environment and can enhance social opportunities. And I think people genuinely mostly want to feel socially useful, and there's certainly that notion of inclusion and belonging to society more if you are working, and that feeds into enhanced self-esteem. And also, of course, having money. Money is quite useful to get, and we know that the disability support pension is not doesn't allow you to do extras in your life, shall we say. Now, what are the reasons that people are so excluded from work if they have disorders like schizophrenia? I will, by the way, talk about these disorders like schizophrenia and bipolar as though they're sort of disorders. Of course, we know that only sets of symptoms which happen to afflict individuals at certain times and in certain circumstances, but if you can bear with me just for utility, I will use the terms. One of the, and this is from a report from the Equal Opportunities Commission, looking at symptoms, and that's a bit of what I will concentrate on later on in the talk. But there's other issues as well, which again psychiatrists need to bear in mind. Side effects of psychiatric medication, I mean sedation particularly in this regard. I mean some of the medications we use are so sedating that people really can't get up in the morning, and that becomes very difficult to hold down work. Also some of the medications we use actually make thinking more fuzzy and impair cognition. There's also these issues about access and also job design problems, stigma, issues to do with workplace itself. And we've got to do more and more around those things. But as a humble psychiatrist, one little cog in the vast machine of mental health services, I would like to concentrate on these two matters: mood instability in bipolar and cognitive dysfunction in schizophrenia. So this is compatible with what Frost said, support and work with other services towards an integration of vocational and clinical services at the level of service delivery. One of the structural problems we have in this country is that mental health services are removed from other services too much. And I think that in the evolution of non-government organisation, PDRS sector, it's a bit of an anomaly actually, because non-government organisations would actually mostly government funded. But anyway, I think that the imperative for mental health services from our perspective is to work much more proactively with the PDRS sector and with vocational people involved with vocation. And I mean, I have a vision where we should actually bulldoze all the mental health clinics and do a rebuild, which is actually, this is quite a nice setting. I think we can persuade the state government. It's election time. We can persuade the state government to offer this outside St Vincent's catchment area, unfortunately. Jolly nice view. But I do have this vision about having actually the front of the service would actually be a social firm, which would be like